Hello, my friends. Happy Valentine's Day, 14th of February 2024, here in New Zealand at least. I know many of you haven't got there yet. You're on the afternoon or the evening of the 13th, but there you go. I'm coming to you from the future yet again, as I do every Wednesday morning, my time, 9 a.m. Chat with Matt, half an hour or so, to talk about whatever's going on for you. I'm pretty sure I asked the question about questions, not a question. Basically, said ask us anything, inspire a conversation on our little notification post. Hey, Sister Twy, how are you? The Mimi post I put up, and I won't hold my computer up because it's plugged into half a dozen cords. Post says the secret to mastering the use of questions is dun 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 to let go of needing to answer them with your mind. There's nothing wrong to having an answer of a question, a potential answer. The problem is, for most people, we are very quick to want to draw a conclusion. We love the idea of concluding things, putting things to bed, not having to think about things again, putting things in buckets. We love this sort of reductionist mindset of, oh, I know that, it's this, right? That person you can't trust. It's easy then because you don't have to monitor or feel into or analyze what they're currently doing because you already know, right? You have this delusion, people do, that they already know something, right? It's very, very common. We all do it to some degree. We draw conclusions and then are lazy, basically. Humans are lazy. So when we ask questions, and questions are really, really powerful, really, really powerful ways of getting different insights. Questions can be really useful for developing deeper awareness around what's going on in our lives, what we're experiencing. Right, when we ask a question, we're basically opening up a space of curiosity. We're basically signaling that we are actually interested in something, right? And if we ask a question from a space of neutrality, then we can also stay open to different influences, you know. I kind of lost where I was going there, but I'll probably swing back to it at some moment. There's something there that I did feel was coming out, but I'm not sure what it was. Anyway, questions can really open up a field of possibility and potential, especially when we ask them without needing to desperately know the answer, right? I think one of the biggest issues for us over the last few thousand years, during this period of more dense energy on the planet, we could call it a dark phase, but that comes with all sorts of other connotations. But the truth is the energy has been denser here, and we haven't had much access to our heart space easily, right? That's why the various esoteric teachings are full of rather elaborate and at least strong, disciplined practices to get into the heart. Hey, Sister Jill. Which I don't believe is so necessary today. It is good to employ some discipline, don't get me wrong, right? Disciplined practice is useful. But, you know, when you read the scriptures from what they were doing 300 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, the practices were rigorous because they needed to be. Because to break through the density of the lockdown required a huge amount of effort, a huge amount of dedication and devotion. You had to meditate for hours to achieve states of being. You had to practice breathing diligently, right? And various, you know, you read the Tibetan practices, they were rigorous because they had to be. I believe we're very, very fortunate currently that we don't need to practice nearly so diligently to have amazing experiences. That's been my experience anyway. And I come from a yoga background where we were trained to practice diligently, hours of mantra practice, rolling the beads through your fingers, etc., and kriyas, etc., to raise energy, all of which very, very useful in many ways, but not necessary to have experiences that are very, very beneficial to expanding your field of consciousness today. Anyway, I'm open to any questions and comments because I've got nothing written in ahead of time other than a few comments on that post I put up, which were basically affirmative comments that that's an interesting way of looking at questions, right? Not needing to know an answer. But no specific questions to take me on in inspiration, or they don't have to be questions, by the way. It can just be a comment or a request or anything. A statement of what you've been experiencing is also inspirational, allows us to deliver more to what we feel people are looking for. Anywho, I'll keep talking about questions because that's what's currently on the table. So yeah, when you ask a question, you open up a field of inquiry. I think I shortchanged you on what I was talking about before, but I've completely forgotten about it when I went into rigorous practices. So I'll acknowledge that and move on. But such is the way. Now I've just lost what I was about to say. The chaotic energy is reasonably intense. Questions, not needing to know an answer, opening up fields of possibility. Yeah, I think, as I was talking about earlier, the human mind is very quick to want to draw conclusions and to know things. And this is, what I was talking about before, where we've come through, several thousand years of oppressive or dense energy. We've relied very heavily on our mind because we haven't had a lot of access to our intuitive knowing. We haven't had a lot of access to our heart's wisdom. And so we've had to think our way through a lot of things. And that's why we could almost call this dense energy the age of rules, because that's what's happened. We've come through a period where rule-based living has been incredibly popular, right? That if you follow a simple set of rules, what you should do and you shouldn't do, the commandments, as an example, last 2,000 years, the commandments, if you follow a simple set of rules, you simplify life because you know what you should do and you shouldn't do, right? This binary idea of the world that there's a yes and a no, a right and a wrong, a good and a bad, right? This reductionist mindset that takes a lot of the nuance out of actually living an expansive life as a spiritual being, having a human moment. But you create a level of peace in your brain that if you follow the rules, then you will get it right. And if you get it right, you'll be rewarded, right? If you follow the rules, if you look after the rules, then the rules will look after you, right? And so that has been very appealing in this darker, denser age. And so it grew very much in popularity, that this is the way we will live, where there is a right and a wrong to do with any specific situation, and all you need to do is apply the rules. Reductionist mindset that's very appealing, but it, as I said, it takes away a lot of the nuance, a lot of the potential experience that any particular situation could also deliver, right? And we're here to have experiences. That's why we bothered incarnating to start with, to have these experiences. And not that the experience of living by rules is a complete dead loss. It's not. It's a valid experience as well, but we've had it. We've had that one. Jill said it also hands over responsibility to others. Yeah, and we become a nanny state. Exactly right. So people don't want to take responsibility for themselves because they're scared of getting it wrong. They're scared of going against the rules. So they much prefer to just follow the rules diligently and emphatically and literally, right? There's literal interpretation of what it means. And then we have this whole school of law, which is basically the argument of how to literally translate these words that are written down, and creating clever arguments to allow people to get off doing things and to, bend the connotation, which is understandable because everything can be connotated, have a different perspective. And so whose perspective is the right perspective? That's what law and lawyers argue, basically. Whose perspective are we following here? Because truth is malleable. I know a lot of people don't think truth is malleable. They think truth is absolute. You know, he murdered her, so he's guilty, right, of murder. It seems very cut and dry, logical, yes or no. But the truth is, everything comes through perspectives and filters. And so, turn that off. And so we can, what am I trying to do? That one. And so we can argue these things. And so that's what lawyers have done and politicians have done, and various people who use words in flowery ways have done for a long time. Jill said, someone wise said to me that if we keep asking questions and think we aren't getting answers, it's mostly that we forgot to go quiet and hear the answers. Yeah. Well, that opens up another interesting point, that most people have we've been trained out of being quiet. I think we've been trained into this world of very obvious polar opposites where we expect everything to be yes or no, very, very obvious and very, very clearly stated. You should do this, you shouldn't do that, right? And so we want, the human ego wants to have a relationship with spirit, or a relationship with their own heart, or a relationship with their own intuition that comes without doubt, right? That they're going to ask a question and they're going to hear the answer in clear language that they understand implicitly. And it just does not happen that way generally for most of the people most of the time, right? Just about everyone I know, or a lot of people at least, would all want their intuitive guidance or their spiritual guidance to be more clear, so that they don't have to question it. We want to absolve our responsibility. So we want to ask a question and then get a clear answer so that we don't have to think about this anymore, right? So that now we know, and now that we know, we have a conclusion and we can relax. I think a lot of people are looking for this, ability to get out of the stress, the perceived stress of needing to make decisions for themselves based on unknown quantities, which seems really dangerous when we've been trained into the idea, this mental idea, that we should know whether it's right or wrong. And the point is, nothing is right or wrong. And so everything is available to us to inquire into or to experience without this sort of judgmental idea that you're either doing the right thing or the wrong thing. And if you're doing the right thing, you'll be rewarded. If you're doing the wrong thing, you'll be punished. This reductionist mindset has us in this stress where we're constantly trying to find the right answers to our questions rather than allowing our questions to open up fields of potential and possibility, opportunities to have experiences. When we start using questions in this sort of curious manner, that we're looking for experiences that help us develop wisdom around the specific topic that we're asking questions on, rather than wanting to know the exact right answer. Because there is no exact right answer. That's the point, right? The exact right answer is this mythological idea that there's an absoluteness, that there's absolutely the right answer to this question. There isn't, right? There isn't a right answer to any question. I know you say 3 + 2 = fucking 5. That's the right answer, and there's no doubt on that. But, are we talking 3 apples and 2 oranges? Because that doesn't equal 5. It equals 5 pieces of fruit, but it also equals a fruit salad. Whatever. The point is, we can view anything from a different perspective. Could have said 3 + 2 = 5. We're talking 3 apples and 2 grains of sand to make it more obvious, right? 2 grains of sand is still 3 + 2 = 5, but it's 3 objects that we're observing, and not 5 pieces of fruit, as an example, right? So reductionist mindset has us in this relationship with questions that we think we can get an absolute answer. And questions really give us the opportunity to inquire into experiences that help us develop wisdom around topics, right? Wisdom is compiled through experiences that we have that help us not even necessarily understand in the way that we conceptualize understand, but it helps us commune with situations in a way that are more full. It's a difficult thing because if I say understand, if I say make sense, there's all limitation around that. We're trying to talk in language around having experiences that develop wisdom. This wisdom, it can't even really be described, right? It's the joy of living. Jill said, sometimes the answers aren't understood till long after the event. Then we retrospectively realized we did get guidance. Yeah, just felt our way through it, maybe acting on that guidance intuitively. Exactly. So, we're being guided, we're being influenced by a huge range of inputs all of the time, some of which coming from spirit, some of which coming from our gut, our heart, our head, the life around us, other people in our life. All these influences are affecting us. The interesting thing is when we open ourselves up to a question, when we open ourselves up to receiving guidance, we can allow these influences to have more effect in our life. Now, some people think that that's not a great thing because you're going to get confused and you're not going to know the right answer. It all comes back to a lot of the stress that we're creating in this world is this idea that there's a right answer and a wrong answer. And if we get it wrong, we're going to be punished or we're going to suffer. And if we get it right, then things are going to be better and more easy, right? If I make the right decision, life will be more easy. Then I'll be able to relax and then I'll be able to be happy. Can you not be happy in the confusion? Can you not be happy in the, I don't completely understand this, right? Can we let go of this idea that not understanding something is dangerous, bad, or wrong, or some sort of failure on your part? Your brain is not capable of understanding if all, right? I don't understand myself. I don't understand a lot of the interactions I have. I have levels of understanding with what's going on, but the more that I recognize my limitation of understanding, the more joyful life actually becomes, the more interesting it becomes, the less I'm sort of contracted around the right and the wrong, the yes and the no, and the delusion that I understand this and I know what to do, right? I don't understand it and I feel to do this. I feel to do this. I don't know what to do, as in it's a conclusion and this is the right thing to do. This is what I feel to do now, and I'm prepared to deal with any of the consequences of doing this, right? And I'm not as afraid that it's going to be so bad that I won't be able to cope with what I choose to do now, because I've had many experiences of stepping into the fray and doing something without being sure, having an unexpected outcome, and still finding that eventually it all works out in a way that's life affirming, that's beneficial, that's expansive, right? It gives me, I learn something, or I have an experience that develops a foundation or a deeper confidence, whatever we want to talk about, right? Jill was talking before, we get told that we need all of the infrastructures and rules to keep us safe, but it doesn't necessarily. Yeah, I've talked about this before. Hey, Sister Susie. Hence coming back to trust, exactly. Coming back to trusting ourselves. When you travel through parts of Southeast Asia, example, I'll use Bali as an example because I talked about this, I think it was 2018, right, when I was in Bali. I was in Bali in 2019 as well, but I'm pretty sure the first time I was really talking about this was 2018. How there's far fewer safety precautions, right? Far fewer rules when you're in places like this, which seems rather irresponsible of their governance systems, right? There's not fences around dangerous cliffs. There's not padding in the playground, etc., etc., right? There's very few playgrounds for that matter. But, there's far fewer rules. You see kids, all over mopeds, parents driving a moped with 3 children on the back. Completely wouldn't happen in our Western society because it's too dangerous, right? And that's not right. We have rules to protect people from doing stupid things. What we consider a stupid thing, right, because it's too dangerous, is basically what we've been educated into on our risk curve about what's appropriate and what's not. When I grew up in the 70s, we had steel playground equipment over concrete, right? Monkey bars and shit over concrete, and we swung on them and we fell off and we grazed our knees and some kids hit their heads, etc., right? That has been slowly replaced over the last 5 decades till now. Playgrounds not only are all padded up, but hardly have anywhere where you can fall from, right? Because if someone falls, someone else wants to sue that that's a bad thing, right? No one wants anyone, especially their children, to have an upsetting experience, a painful experience, right? There's this idea that the rules are going to protect us from pain. Unfortunately, pain is how we learn and grow. So if we keep protecting ourselves from pain, right, via the nanny state or whatever you want to call it, various rules, trying to make things more and more comfortable for us, so there's less and less bad outcomes, we become less and less capable of doing life. We become less and less capable of having an experience that's meaningful for us, because everything becomes so padded in one way or another, so fenced off, that we can't actually have an experience that allows us to take responsibility for maintaining our own safety. And so we're looking for safety. Is this a safe relationship? Is this a safe space in this external world, right? We're expecting other people to provide us safety all of the time. And I'm not saying that that's completely inappropriate. There are opportunities where safe spaces, right, where various agreements are in place that allows you to express things that you feel vulnerable about or whatever. But this idea that safety is something that happens around you rather than something you feel inherently in yourself, right? This idea that I am safe because I am resilient. And a lot of people go, no, you can't keep expecting people to be resilient. People are burning out. People are this and that. And I get that, right? I get the idea that people don't want to be more resilient because they feel they're at their capacity. But the problem is this world is going to become more and more chaotic, more and more changeable as we go through the intense part of this transformation. And safety is something we find within ourselves. It's something that we understand who we be, right, rather than having it orchestrated around us. And it's not to say that we can't create safe spaces to help people heal and grow. I'm a great fan of that as well. But the problem is where does it stop? Because we've seen in like the playground example, it's becoming narrower and narrower. Now kids go to playgrounds through virtual goggles, right? This is the point, and their muscles are becoming weaker and weaker, and so few kids now can actually do the monkey bars and stuff because they're not actually getting the opportunity to do that, right? And it's not the same doing it with virtual goggles, doing it with your Y console or whatever, right? Playing tennis with your Y console, swinging a bat through the air is not the same as actually going out to a tennis court and having to run and hit the fucking ball with the power that's required to hit the ball. And so that's a shame, because we're embodied for a reason. Humans are embodied for a reason because the embodiment experience is valuable, and we can have a virtual experience in the astral, right, or in various other spiritual realms. We can have virtual experience. We can dream all sorts of things in other worlds. We've come here to be embodied, and that involves necessarily taking risks. We're taking risks to our bodily health, and also taking risks emotionally and mentally and financially. Risk is part of living. If there's no risk involved, there's no real reason to be here. Risk makes it real. Risk elevates the sense of excitement in doing things. We see this because as the world becomes less and less risk tolerant in our general life because of all of these rules that limit us down, then people want to go and jump out of airplanes with a parachute for fun now, or jump off a bridge with an elastic band tied to their ankles for fun now, because They're not getting enough adrenaline in their daily life. They're not actually facing any risk in their daily life. So they need to find something that helps them feel alive, right? At what point can we be left to take our own responsibility for our own safety? Exactly, Susie. That's a great question. At what point? Is there a point? Is there a point? And it's a very interesting question, because how much care do we have to take of those who are a little less capable of taking their own responsibility, right? We could call them stupid, but that's, quite judgmental. But it's fair to say that some people have more capacity to make sensible decisions than others in our society. Now, at what point do we confine the whole of society to a level of safety or a level of non-responsibility because others aren't capable of making sensible decisions about how close they step to a cliff face, or whether they're capable of climbing a ladder, or how steep the stairs could be that the majority of the population can navigate, right? But some people are in wheelchairs, so does that mean we have to have ramps absolutely everywhere so that we include everyone in every potential experience that could be had, thus limiting everyone down to the lowest common denominator, or the lowest ability, right? Now, these are ethical questions that we think of. Now, is it kind to have every experience available to every person who's alive? I don't believe so, because that's completely unkind to people who want to stretch themselves, right? But otherwise we'll leave out the people who are incapable of having that experience. That's life. There's always going to be a range of capacities of anyone, right? Do I want to have the experience that a very well trained free climber can have? No, I would fucking freak out if I was trying to climb a cliff without a rope. They can do it. Does that mean I should do it? I can't do it. Does that mean they shouldn't do it? Right? This is the point, right? Are we trying to reduce this down to a singular opportunity for everyone so that everyone can feel included? This sort of mentality that's in the sort of spirit, the politically correctness, or the PC movement, or whatever we want to call it, right, is ridiculous, right? This idea that other people shouldn't feel bad that they can't do something, therefore we'll stop everyone doing it, right, so that everyone can feel included, is very naive, right, to think that we can do this to the whole of society, bring it all down, and is limiting people's ability to express themselves in all sorts of ways. And yet we seem to be dancing in that direction in some ways, and then in other ways we're going, allowing people to do completely dangerous things, like, choose. I won't even go there. I just got a tap on the shoulder. Don't go there. But this is, Susie said now they're putting facial surveillance in supermarkets to identify criminals. Yeah, just like they did in China, right? And then you can stop people using their digital currency if they haven't been a quote-unquote good person, which could mean all sorts of things depending on what the current state identifies as a good person. The point is, I think I'll come back to using questions. The issue is to let go of conclusions that we have and come back into using questions in a way that opens potentials. It's very easy to draw conclusions about what's right and wrong. So very easily we could say, well, it's wrong to put, facial surveillance in supermarkets because ultimately that's limiting. Is it? Is it not? I think what's limiting is the powers that be behind the facial surveillance. Because for the vast majority of us who aren't doing things wrong, we don't have to worry. But the point is, what we are doing could be classified as wrong for thinking for ourselves in the near future, if not already. So I guess the point is to let go of this sort of fear-based way of doing the world and thinking things are right and wrong and conclusional, and advocate for a society that we want to live in. Advocate for a world an experience that feels meaningful for us and feels expansive for us. And I believe questioning is a valuable way of doing that, especially when we don't contract around the idea that there's a right answer and a wrong answer. And allowing questions to open inquiry that is ultimately expansive. So when we feel into the question of what is a acceptable point of control that our authority should take, because if we say there should be no controls, that's going to make it very, very interesting to live here in our rather congested societies, right? If we take away all control, so there's no more any driving rules, and so you can drive wherever you want on the road at any speed you want and turn whenever you want in any way you want, and there's no repercussions from any sort of controlling influence, right? Do you think we could, as a society at this stage, manage effective transportation in cars? I would argue probably not, right? Maybe people would continue with the rules that we've been trained for so long, but let's just say that was completely wiped out of our brains, and now we jumped in a car, drove out onto the street, and had no idea what anyone else was going to do. There was no convention at this stage, and we're all just left to freeform this thing. How would that go? Many of us would be very, very cautious. Others would be completely reckless. And it would be a bloodbath out there on the streets, right? People would be crashing all over the place. Roads would be blocked and closed. It would be insane. So we have traffic rules, guidelines, as to what's appropriate. We'll all stick to one side of the road, as an example. We'll all drive at a certain speed, for example. We'll all use indicators, and we'll all, you have to wait if this car's doing this. And we have these conventions that make traffic flow manageable for us, and that's useful. When does that become overly constrictive, right? And when is it useful? This is the point. I don't think we're at a point where we can overcome all rules at the moment and still live in the level of density that we currently have on the planet. So it's not about making all rules wrong. It's not about making authority wrong, because rules don't work without a degree of authority that at least disseminates the rules and has a role in educating people as to what the conventions are, and helps to identify and mark, and yes, to some degree police, because otherwise, how do we maintain? It's all very well to put conventions out there, but if there's no repercussions for not following the conventions, then some people won't, and that will create a lot of fear and havoc for those who are trying to follow the conventions. So, there's no easy answer. That's the point. The point is, though, if we start collectively allowing these questions to be okay, to ask a question, what level of authoritarian control is appropriate in this situation? At the moment, we don't ask that question. We defer to the authorities to choose how much authoritarian control they put over us, right? There's this idea in democracy that your point of choice is when you go to the polling booth. That's where you get to make your choice. And after that, you have no more say in what's happening in our society, because you've exercised your right in this sort of facade of casting a vote, right? And in that idea, then you've had your say, and now the people that you voted for are going to declare what's appropriate for you. That's BS, right? And we all know it's BS. And this idea of democracy basically runs in the idea that the majority of the people get to choose what everyone does. And while that sounds kind of fair, it certainly isn't if you're in a minority, right? And so then we look at, well, how do we create this idea where it's not just catering for the majority, but how do we create an equitable society, right? This is a question. How do we create an equitable society that takes account of everyone's needs, but doesn't necessarily give absolutely everyone absolutely everything that they want, right? That, you know, certain people you don't get to completely have an individual dictate over what everyone's doing. E.g., so we're not all having to, you know, take massive risks to get to work, or live in a society where there's absolutely no risk because someone's decided that they don't want any risk in their life, and therefore we're all going to have to, right, comply with what one person wants. How do we create a equitable world that has a lot of, or a degree of give and take, right, a compromise involved, so that we can all feel that our needs or our desires are being heard and considered, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get absolutely everything that we want the way that we want it, because we're 8 billion people, all with slightly different ideas. So we talk about the moment law and encourage, but traffic lights go off sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, Jules. Truth tried to, you know, we've gone through this phase, or we're going through this phase of schools dumbing everything down. So getting rid of school sports days because it made some kids feel inadequate, that they couldn't run as fast as others, right? When I went to school, we had graded classes right from the get-go. You know, you knew where you stood in the school because you were either in class 1 or class 5. There was 5 classes in the primary school I went to, and I started in class 5 at the bottom because I, you know, undiagnosed dyslexia, couldn't read, which, you know, makes you stupid in the eyes of the schooling system in 1975. That's not useful. And I was lucky enough to get a teacher that helped me learn to read, and my mum put a lot of effort into helping me learn to read. And, you know, by class 8, by year 8, I was in class 2, and by year 9, is that right? What years am I talking about? No, that was 8 years old. By year 4, I was in class 2, and by year 5, I was in class 1, and that's where I stayed because I'd learnt to read. But, you know, everything was graded, and we all knew where we stood in the class, right? It was very, very obvious. Everyone knew where they stood academically. Is that useful? No. But is it useful to completely go the other way so that there's no opportunity for comparison at all? No. In my opinion, what's useful is helping people understand that comparing each other on any particular criteria is not the be and end all. That we can recognize that some kids are great at doing some things and other kids are great at doing other things. Or some people, let's get rid of the idea of kids. People are good at doing different things, and can we celebrate them for what they're good at without feeling bad that we're not good at that, and without putting them down that they're not good at other things, right? Can we recognize that everyone has strengths and weaknesses, and that is part of the strength of the community at whole? And rather than protecting people from the disappointment of comparing themselves and coming up short, can we help people stop comparing themselves so absolutely, but to recognize they're not good at doing something that someone else is, but they're good at doing something else? Can we help people find their own gifts? Can we help people find what they are proud about themselves to share and to contribute, rather than creating this idea that there's only certain attributes that are valuable? I think this is where we fall down, and where comparison creates so much pain, is this idea that there's only a very small handful of attributes that are valuable by society, and if you don't have strength in one of those, then you are a burden to society, etc., right? You're not good enough. Anywho, I just have this idea that I've probably talked for long enough. I have indeed. We all brings different things to the party. Exactly, Jill. Susie said, first we have to raise the vibration of the planet. No, we don't have to do that, Susie. It's doing that for us. So at least we can start coming from more of a space of love rather than fear. No, the vibration of the planet's looking after ourselves. Don't take on the burden of thinking you have to raise the vibration of the planet. What's useful for you to do is recognize how you can better cope with the rising vibration of the planet. First, we need to be able to surf the current waves. The vibrations, the waves are rising by themselves. So our job is to be comfortable with the current raising of the vibration and allow ourselves to utilize this, us personally, utilize the raise in vibration or the current vibration to radiate our truth. That's what's important for us to do, to allow the current vibration to influence us in a way that we work as an example for others in how to live in a higher vibration. So I think it's important that we don't get burdened by this idea that we have to raise the vibration and this is hard work, because that creates a stress that basically lowers the vibration. So yeah, our job is to relax into exemplifying or being an example of a raised vibration. And that involves going through our own pain and our own discomfort as this raising vibration shakes the shit out of us. So it's about relaxing into going with the flow of a rising vibration and allowing ourselves to process that experience in a way that is visible to others, right? We don't need to hide this away. I think that's important, that we can show up more authentic and more aware. And use questions, right? Use questions. Ask questions of other people in a way that you don't need them to answer. Talk with other people around questions about where should the set point of society be, not in an idea that you're going to come down to an exact answer, but just to open your minds to this idea that currently other people are dictating a set point that's not necessarily benefiting us, and not to get contracted around that and feel the wrongness of that, but to think about, to commune with each other, to communicate and to express and to discuss what could be different and what that might look like. And not necessarily think you're going to come up with the answer, because you don't need to. But the more of us that are in the question, the more that the universe can show us potential answers. That's the point, right? Answers come when you're in the question, as opposed to if you're already in the conclusion, the contraction of the answer, then you've closed your mind off to all the other potentials and possibilities. When you stay open in the question, much more opportunity to see different options come your way. I think that's where I was trying to go right at the start. I never actually got there. The use of questions is not about contracting around an answer that's either right or wrong, good or bad. It's about opening your mind to all of the different ways that that question could be answered, right? And then not to think that you have to pick one. You don't have to pick one. We can surf around, we can dance around all sorts of different opportunities. We can experiment and experience. That's what we're here to do. Experiment and experience things that gain us wisdom, that develop wisdom through experimentation, right? Trying something and having an outcome, getting results. Anyway, yes, exactly, Jill. We need to ask open questions too, not ones with yes/no answers. Yeah, yes/no answers are very, very reductionist and in many ways retarded. In the true use of the word retarded, it holds us back. Anyway, much love to you all, my friends. Go well. Happy New Year as well. It's Valentine's Day and it was New Year, 4 or 5 days ago, Lunar New Year. So yeah, dance in the energy of the dragon. It is a powerful time, and these are exciting times. So go well.